friends. Welcome to episode 53 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can. Whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game up to the next level. I am Sarah.
And I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
You know, I wanted to say that I was ready for this, but I wasn't.
You know, what I realized like about 30 seconds ago is that it's dangerous, our new recording setup, because we don't have Caitlin here to tell us like it's time, we're ready to go. We're like in the middle of a discussion about our today's show topic. And,
yeah, we've been going all over about this topic, so we're gonna pack a lot into the schedule. But yeah, we were totally
all of a sudden we're like, oh shoot, we got shit to do. Fire it up.
So here we are.
Hi everybody.
Do you feel things have adjusted or changed in the world outside of our little thing? Do you feel like things have gotten lighter, or do you feel better about things? I know I'm kind of off topic from like what we normally talk about, but this is our pause moment before we get started.
No, I gotcha. I don't know. I'll be dead honest with you. I've been kind of keeping my head down. Because you know, I've been very open about my struggle with depression.
No, I'm with you.
I've really been trying to just kind of find that balance between paying enough attention so that I'm not complicit in my own destruction, and utterly tuning everything out because it's just too much.
I get that.
That's been a constant struggle for me. But I don't know. I stay home, I play video games, and just try to do my best.
I feel like people as a general, like at least within my friends group and yours too, because we cross a lot of circles, that we're hitting a stride of comfort.
We're kind of getting used to the whole
quarantine
thing.
We've figured out what we need and where to find it, and you know, well, this is running out there. Okay, well, I'm prepared. Mm-hmm. You know, I've got what I need.
Yeah.
I can get in contact with people. People found Zoom, and we've just kind of hit a stride, and gotten, I'm not going to say comfortable, but accustomed, and that's changed a little bit of the breathing room, and I like that. It's good to see.
Yeah.
You know, people are comfortable with the precautions. It's no longer weird to see someone walking down the street with a mask. Mm-hmm. It's weirder that you basically just avoid the people who don't have them.
Right.
You just kind of stay away from them. Like this weekend, Monday we actually had some people stop by the house and were able to talk with Vicky for her birthday. Happy birthday, Vic. I'll say that again because it's worth it. And the people who came were masked and gloved. Some, you know, way more covered than others. But they still came just to say hi and you know, do their little thing and take off.
And everybody just kind of stood out on the back patio,
we kept very good distance, and but what was nice was we heard people from different areas and kind of got feelings from where they were at. Some who were in the medical profession, so we got some information there, which I'm not going to reiterate because it's hearsay and it's I'm hearing secondhand, so I'm not going to try and say that this is a thing. But what it gave me was a sense of we are coming to an equilibrium as a society with this and an understanding, and I liked that feeling. It wasn't just a feeling of fear from everyone. And so that was nice. That was nice.
Good. That is really good, though. Yeah.
Hey, Matt Elf. Glad to have you here with us. I wanted to make sure you didn't miss it since it's not part of your normal routine this week.
Right.
So we are glad to have you.
Welcome to everybody in the live chat.
Yes. Both you, Knox and Sam. I'm hoping a few more faces show up as well. I know I see some on the Mixlr. We're glad to have you as well out there in listening land, but not necessarily chat land. So we do appreciate you listening live, all of you.
So, getting on to today's topic.
Holy poop.
Okay, so we name drop Palladium, specifically like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
All the time.
Yeah. So there's your first turtle reference for the show.
There will be more.
But we name drop it all the time, but I know I'm at least in my sense, I think Palladium's kind of fallen out of fashion. In recent years, it's more of a child of the 80s and 90s than it is a this millennium thing, you know. So I think our newest generation of gamers aren't as familiar with games like Palladium. So I wanted to take some time and just talk about it and do a spotlight for it, and kind of let everybody know what Palladium is in scope, what it's good at, what it's bad at,
where it come from, kind of where it fit into things. And and how does it compare? And how does it contrast with other systems? Like,
right.
when we're talking about systems, we talk about a wide breadth of systems. And most of our systems fit within the tabletop stack of dice, talking maps, things like that, style of role-playing. There are a lot of other styles, but we're talking about very classic tabletop role-play.
Yes.
And this definitely, Palladium fits within it, but within its own subset of what that is. A lot of people use D&D as the baseline.
Yeah.
Like whether you go one way or another and how you branch away from it. And I definitely say that Palladium sits in a system design that is that is colloquially known as a multiverse design, where you have a universal system that goes over multiple designs of worlds. GURPS does a job of that as well.
Yeah, GURPS does an excellent job of
that. There's another system that I'm losing my mind on. That's another good system for that. Technically, Fate is that to a degree.
Yeah, Fate's pretty system agnostic with its
but
setup.
I think it's different because it is system agnostic. It wasn't embedded in a system that then grew out. Whereas Palladium started in a fantasy system and then grew from that point to where it is today.
Matt Elf is asking, do you see that as a trend away from really crunchy / numbers-based systems? I think so. I don't think I see as many I think recent games that we've been seeing coming out have been a lot more role-play heavy and a lot more rules light.
But that may also be our perception of where we're sitting.
Honestly, I think the crunch
it's a lot easier to write a lighter game too.
Okay, so just looking at our local gaming store, okay, our FLGS, friendly local gaming store. Yep. If you just look at the hardcover books that they sell on their shelf, okay, judging from what they're stocking, we can infer that that's what's in fashion right now.
Right, because they're not going to stock things that people aren't playing or that aren't inherently popular, although I say that in so many weird ways, because inherently popular means people are buying it, and the only way you know about it is if it's at the store. So,
I mean, maybe.
I mean, people find stuff along the way all the time.
But I mean, okay, so looking at the things that I saw last time they were there, obviously D&D 5th edition,
right?
Pathfinder,
yep,
which is arguably the crunchiest of the games that I think I've seen out there. Starfinder.
Yep.
I've seen iterations of Fate that are out there. I think it's called the more recent Call of Cthulhu book, which I understand is a little bit crunchy.
Yes, it is. I would say that it sits on the crunchier end of the scale.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's GURPS / Palladium crunchy.
No, and I think we can get into that a little bit to kind of understand what that means. So just to put it in genre perspective, and time perspective, Palladium first came out in 1981. Now, we say that as that wasn't that long ago, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I was 1 year old.
Yeah, exactly. And funny enough, I pulled out my player's handbook for 2nd edition. Actually, this is Vicky's. I have mine upstairs, and then we have a spare.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see when this was printed. Because I didn't look it up, and I didn't want to look it up online. I wanted to see what the print date on this was. And it's what's funny is the foreword is 1989.
Oh my goodness!
So
can I put a picture of this on Twitter?
You could put a picture of this on Twitter. My hair's terrible. But the foreword in this is 1989, so that gives you a perspective of the fantasy that and again, this is D&D 2nd edition Player's Handbook, the classic one. So Palladium doing this in 1981 was really following up on D&D, original D&D, and what was going on in the world, and where 2nd edition was coming into play and altering some of the rules that were there. So as an opening system, it was pretty amazing.
Now, keeping in mind, too, I mean, we talk a lot about, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that, and Heroes Unlimited and Rifts and whatnot, but we're talking, this is Palladium fantasy role-playing, okay? This was an exact answer to D&D. This was their flagship game at the time, was their fantasy system.
Yeah. And Matt Elf just put in perspective, he said Chaosium was in the same kind of vein, and I tend to agree with him to a point. It's not. I would not put it in a crunchy state, but I would put it in a more crunchy state than most because there was quite a bit of rules in that.
Yeah.
But definitely in a multiverse, in a multiverse design, same as the Palladium. So a lot of things were coming out at that time that way, where you would build a world and a rule system at the same time, and then just keep adding on to it, but keeping the rule set.
Yeah.
And carrying that through so that you could use that rule set in any one of these stacks of worlds that we give you and add on books.
We'll circle back around to that too, but I would say that right there is probably the biggest draw of Palladium
without
in
a doubt.
general.
Yeah.
Simply because you can pull from just about any book and it's applicable.
And I would say not only that was what made it enticing was the fact that there were books.
Yeah.
Like I could go grab a book of fantasy, or I could grab a contemporary book, or I could grab a future book, or I could grab a post-Holocaust book that were all from the same system, and now I had more stuff to read and learn about a world that I didn't have to create whole cloth and try and figure things out. And as a kid, that was great.
It was.
That gave me tons of information and neat things to look at and to follow, and then to be able to kind of blend those things on occasion was even more amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I think that was a major appeal of a multiverse system, was that they were writing a lot, like a ton. Another thing that I'm just going to throw out there in the sub on this is that it's local. Palladium's a local system for us.
Well, local to us, anyways.
Yeah.
Yes,
it was Michigan based,
in the Detroit
and
area.
they literally are down the road from us, which
right down.
We're going to leave it right there for that. But sometime in my past, I actually got to meet the creator.
Oh, cool!
Like a long time ago, and it was more of a passing chance that I got to sit down at a table with him during the heyday of this stuff.
That's still really neat, though. Yeah.
It was neat. It was different. I will say that it taught me two things. One, the creations always run away from the creator. It's an inevitable thing that's going to happen. And two, never judge a story by their creator. Because you will get a very different feel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will leave that there and get back to the system, because there's history, there's all kinds of stuff with Palladium. I know that there is some stuff that we're not going to discuss, because we're not going to talk about the corpus of the company. We're not going to talk anything. We're just going to talk about the system, and that's what we're going to focus on, is what we loved and how it's different.
So I think the game that both you was it just me, or was it both of us that TMNT was our first foray into Palladium? I think you said RoboTech was yours.
RoboTech. Literally, I can tell you when I got my book.
Okay.
I was walking home from middle school, and there was a bookstore that sold magazines and books and stuff that was in this little plaza right at the corner on the way home. And I would go in there because they had this candy counter that was right at the beginning, right at the front of the store. And then right next to it, on opposite wall, you'd turn, and there were all these books with really cool, and they obviously weren't comics.
Sure.
And I was trying to figure out, and so I grabbed this book that had a giant mech on the front that looked very cartoonish, and I'm like, what is this? And I started paging through it. I was like, and I kept going there week after week and grabbing, and it was like there were 2 copies there, but there were a few other books with it, and I saw D&D and some other books there, so he clearly had a little role-playing section. And it was probably bigger than I thought, and there was probably some other stuff in there. But I kept looking at that price tag, and I was like, God damn, I'm going to get that. And finally, I saved up enough lunch money and other monies that I had stashed away.
20 whole bucks at that time.
I think it was $20 or $24, and I bought it. And I took it home, and I fucking destroyed that book. I still have it. It's upstairs. It's definitely got the love from a childhood in there. You can see the scroll on it and the marks on pages and things like that. But that was my first love, and that was, honestly, before I saw my first episode of RoboTech.
Oh, wow.
So I had no idea what RoboTech was.
Sight unseen, yeah.
I just thought it was a really cool universe. And then I watched RoboTech, and my dreams of what the universe really was were destroyed by Lin-Min Mei singing. But I liked the rest of it. And,
sure.
And I actually got an appreciation for some of the characters and other things in the story and what they've done with it. But I loved how much content there was that Palladium created for it. There were so many books.
Now, see that, and that's, I would say, probably, we've mentioned the portability of the multiverse sort of thing. But I would say that's probably one of the other great things about the Palladium line was that, especially during the 80s and 90s and stuff like that, they had all these other different licenses. So you picked up the RoboTech license, I picked up the TMNT license. Now, the TMNT license was actually done directly in conjunction with Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, who are the original writers and artists for TMNT.
Yeah.
They did tons of the artwork in the book. Drew up all sorts of cool mutant characters to kind of spark your imagination.
But they had all of the original characters in there, too. With a look that was both a cross between, I would say, the original comics look and imagery, but also some adaptive art that they had put in there, other sketches and things that they had done that was pushing more toward a friendlier cartoon look.
Yeah, in a bit, but the Eastman and Laird have always had their own sort of pseudo realistic, cartoony sort of style that's always been really good.
It's beautiful. I love it.
If you on a side note, if you have an opportunity to read the original Turtles comics, not the like Archie comics version where it's like, oh, totally tubular pizza, dude.
Not the recreation into TV either.
Right now, I kind of wanted to bring that up too, because that's actually what killed the line. Was they had this really cool comic that was these four. I mean, it was supposed to be a little bit of an out there story. I mean, it is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles after all. I mean, we know what we're about, at least, But they all wore red bandanas. They were trained to be assassins, and they were trained to kill the Shredder.
Correct. It was the worst naming conventions and the weirdest design, and how they got.
It was campy as hell. But it was this cool little story about these four turtles that got trained by this rat ninja master to go and avenge the death of his master by killing the Shredder.
Right.
The Shredder was a real estate agent. I mean, he was he had kind of gone legit until the Turtles came to town and were like, we're going to effing kill you.
Right.
And then he had to be like, oh, God, I got to put the ninja stuff back on. And they do. They end up literally knocking him off the edge of a building and blowing him up with his own grenade.
Yeah.
That picture is in the Turtles book. You can find it. And it had some blood, it had some swearing. It was definitely like PG-13 at very least. And then they turned it into the children's product that it became. It's probably well known as now.
Oh yeah,
where they have all different colors and the
styles, and
April O'Neil is white now, and Baxter Stockman is white now.
Which I thought was if you go into the TMNT RPG book, she's not.
No, she is. We did this on Twitter.
Did we?
Yes.
Oh.
No, and on Discord.
The original art's in there, though.
The original art's in there. She is black.
Right.
Yes, and so is Baxter Stockman.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
And they totally whitewashed both of those characters in the cartoons and stuff like that.
Yes.
But they turned it into a kid's product, and then all of a sudden, Palladium instantly saw sales just drop for it.
Yeah.
Because, quote unquote, no self-respecting teenager wanted to be caught dead playing that children's game.
Correct. Correct. But still a fantastic system. So I would say we've talked about RoboTech, we've talked about TMNT. There's a few other genres in there that they've done. One is the book you've got sitting right in front of you,
Heroes Unlimited, which
again, for a Heroes game, damn, there's a lot of content.
Well, because they try to cover everything that could possibly be a superhero.
Which was a lot then.
Like, you've got bionic superheroes and robotic superheroes.
Psychic
heroes and magic heroes and just plain up, shoot lasers from their I-beams superheroes and aliens and all sorts of jazz. And Heroes Unlimited has a little slice of everything. And they've got their own character creation rules for them. And their own, rules for how their powers work and whatnot. So it's a thick book.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, much like everything else in Palladium, it's exhaustive.
Yep.
In its amount of content that they have packed in there. No, we've got there's and of course Rifts. We'll get to Rifts because Rifts is kind of its own category, because that quickly became its their flagship product when that came out in 1990. But the other one we kind of want to mention are like some of their smaller books that See, you've got Ninjas and Super Spies sitting in front of you.
I did. I saw Mad Elf
Ninjas and Super Spies is one of my all-time favorite books, but I wouldn't even call it a setting.
No.
It's just the greatest martial arts source book.
It really is a great martial arts source book. It's pretty incredible.
Like, I only ever use that book because it's got, 51 different martial arts styles in there?
Yeah.
And they give a brief history of them, what the different martial arts tries to do. They've got some character class options in there for,
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is that if you compared this to something like D&D 2nd Edition, these would be your complete books. Whereas, D&D had fighter, rogue, classes, but they were in your player's handbook, and then you'd have your complete books that would go into the subsets of what they were. Whereas with Palladium, you had your main book, which didn't really exist. You had a world. Mm-hmm. And then you had books like Heroes Unlimited, which had a whole series of new classes in it. You had Ninjas and Super, which had a whole series of new classes in it. You had, and everything was different. So there were classes that fit with the world, but they still fit in the same universe.
Yeah.
So it was similar in that design, but I mean, it went way off the charts for what you had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rifts did a good job of that by going by parts of the world, I will say that, and or multiverses of its own.
Right.
Like you had Triax Industries, which was Germany, effectively, and what was going on over there. And you had a whole plethora of stuff that was a whole world unto itself that was just the German area.
Yep.
So
the coalition, all that sort of stuff, right?
Exactly. So I would say that it was fitting within the same design that other groups were following, but I think the breadth of what you had available to you grew exponentially in the books.
See, and TMNT did the exact same thing, actually, back in the day, too, because a lot of the source books that came after that, I mean, there was Transdimensional TMNT in Time, or Turtles in Time and stuff like that taught you about, these sci-fi sort of aspects.
Yeah.
But the main source books that came out for it were things like Mutants of the Yucatan, Mutants Down Under.
Oh, yeah.
Mutants in Avalon, things like that, which were
Turtles in Space.
I'm speaking more terrestrially,
right.
Just simply because, Mutants Down Under, it's all the Australian. It's the Australian source book, so there are some very unique animals down there. If you ever wanted to play a mutant platypus,
you could.
You absolutely could. It was in that book,
But a thing that I would say all of them carried, all of these systems, and moving through them was probably one of the most adaptive character creation systems, that you didn't have to be creative, really.
Yeah.
You could roll on tables to make your character.
Every single step of the way.
Yeah. So if you were just a person who's like, I want to do something crazy, I can follow these tables and make a character, and not only make the stats of the character, not only make the abilities of the character and where he was from, but the background, what made the character, what made them unique, where they had, what things had happened to them, in some details expressed out as far as, in the case of RoboTech, age, sex, weight, disposition, parents, heritage, crazy things. I mean, you could get into some high levels of minutia that it would do for you.
Yep.
Which was neat when you kind of looked at it, because it made things easier. It gave you a start point. It basically inverted the whole 20 questions thing and said, I'm going to answer your 20 questions for you with random rolls.
Yep.
Boom.
Yep.
I mean, I loved that about TMNT, that you could literally create a random mutant. And sometimes it was crappy, but hilarious.
Sometimes it was crappy. And I think even when I was playing full-time, I was not... I don't think I truly understood that you didn't need to roll. And so, we would start a game and I'd be like, oh, I got an opossum.
Yeah. Yeah. Nope, I'm with you.
My ability is to play dead until I'm dead for real.
Nice. So I think the shift, at least for me, from the original, because you had the original fantasy system, you then had RoboTech, which was its own universe, setting-wise. You had Rifts, which was a multiverse, but also kind of its own setting. Because there was all kinds of crazy Pantheon stuff that went with Rifts in different worlds and different areas. So it was its own design.
So let's talk about Rift for just a hot second here. Because,
it was later.
Again, it's so this is starting in 1990. Became their flagship setting, and so basically Rift is it takes place in a semi-near future, where things are still futuristic. Still, you still have like things, power armor and stuff like that.
Right.
But if memory serves correctly, and I'm probably slaughtering a lot of the minutia here, but human beings do something that essentially shatters reality.
Yes.
And so these rifts open up.
Well, it was a nuclear holocaust.
It was a nuclear holocaust.
That's what
right? Okay, so basically these rifts, because they've hit reality so hard and shattered it, open up, and like extra dimensional aliens and stuff like that start spilling through.
Well, Atlantis rises.
Magic flows back into the world because it was closed off from us until we cracked it open, and now it's not.
Right.
So it's imagine it's I would say it's probably its closest cousin is Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah, I could see that. See that.
Dudes in power armor. You've got gigantic weapons. You've got psychic stuff. You've got magic stuff. You've got weird aliens. And war is everywhere.
Yeah.
So
you've got an overpowered government. Yeah. Just I'm paging through it right now. I've got it literally in front of me.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of weird stuff.
There's a ton of stuff in here about the coalition and other places and the world overview.
Oh, that's right.
I'm looking to see what they actually
pages in there too.
Yeah, they did have some great color art in here. It's kind of amazing. But yeah, it's an incredible amount of data that's packed into one world.
Now, one thing I will say about Rifts, and this is actually where I kind of diverge. I never actually got into Rifts because I kind of drew the line with it.
Okay.
So one of the major changes, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the game mechanics in the Palladium world in just a little bit here, but things in so we're all used to a hit point system, right? Coming from a lot of us come from D&D, and we imagine like hit points. Okay. Well, Palladium broke that down into hit points and what they call SDC, and that is structural damage capacity. So objects have SDC. They have an amount of damage they can take before they break. Same thing with a human body, though. You have a certain amount of bumps and bruises and minor flesh wounds that you can take before it actually starts killing you. Okay? And so characters in Palladium games have typically a very, very low hit point pool, but they may have gobs and gobs of SDC.
Right.
Okay. Rifts threw into common use and a mechanic called MDC, and that is mega damage capacity.
Right.
Okay. And one MDC is equivalent to 100 SDC on a 1 to 100 just straight up scale.
Yep.
Okay.
Simple.
So if I do 1 point of MDC to you, that is 100 SDC, and that will straight up vaporize most characters.
Most people, yes.
Unless you are wearing some really high tech armor,
right,
or something like that. Like if I hit a fleshy part of you, it is gone.
Yep. Vaporized.
With even 1 point of MDC.
Yep.
And I mean, like literally, they had like little pen lasers that did like 1d4 MDC, and I'm just thinking to myself, like 1d4, that's not. Oh, that's the noisy cricket. That obliterates any human.
Yeah.
Just gone.
Blades, like laser whips and blades that would do 1d4 MDC. Yeah, and you're like, oh, it's a sword that can cut limbs off.
And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm done. I don't think I can make the jump to MDC. I don't really think I can exist or play or have fun in a world where a stray laser literally destroys my entire character.
To answer the question, Matt Elf, tanks would actually have MDC, but not a lot.
Yeah.
You could technically whittle them away with SDC. There were some that obviously, at a certain point, they basically just ignore small arms fire. Anything that did less than, I want to say, 100 SDC in a burst was ignored.
Yep.
So, like, you're firing a 9mm at a tank, it's not going to do anything. But if you take a fully automatic chain gun that's doing 66 SDC, times 10.
Times 10, yeah.
You could technically whittle away the armor on the front side of a tank.
You could do 1 or 2 whole points of MDC in a turn if you unloaded a minigun on it. Yeah,
right. But you could shred front armor on something, and some things had certain MDC plating.
Yep.
But it wasn't a lot, and it could through. But on the other hand, you'd have things that would have the front chest piece on this has 10 MDC. No, it's not going to take small arms fire.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to shroff that off like it's nothing.
Yep.
So that's where that idea came from. So
now Rifts also did include things like juicers.
Yes.
Who are not people who are enthusiastic about their smoothies.
No. And, maybe they are.
And glitter boys, who are also share no resemblance to David Bowie.
No. Although arguably kind of does. Because they were fabulous. And when they showed up, everyone paid attention to them.
This is true. It's hard to ignore a glitter boy.
Yeah, juicers basically were druggies.
Well, more than that, they were more like if anybody knows Bane from Star I was about to say Star Trek.
Wow.
From Batman.
Yeah.
And I mean comics Batman,
right.
not the movie necessarily, because in the comics, Bane had a chemical harness essentially,
right?
Directly IV injected into
Correct.
different points in his body, and he could just basically flip a switch or turn a valve or whatever it was, and it would inject this this chemical into him that basically turned him into this superhuman giant Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he got stuff done.
Yeah.
Other than that, he was just a guy in a luchador mask.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's basically a juicer.
Yeah, that is a juicer.
They wear these harnesses and it shortens their lifespan to 5-10 years or something like that.
It's pretty short.
Literally, once you start juicing, it just starts killing you.
Yeah, I mean, there were rules for converting off from it, but you still wouldn't get more than 10 years or 15 years out of your life.
Yep.
So.
And but they, oh my god, they were psychotic. Mm-hmm. And then you had your glitter boys, who were the aforementioned, which glitter boy is just a term for this gigantic suit of power armor with a gun that it was about as tall as they were strapped onto the arm.
The shoulder.
Onto the shoulder. And it had, they had literally bracing spikes that would shoot out of the feet into whatever they were standing on, so that the gun, when they fired it, the recoil didn't just send them
tear
flying.
them off the ground. Yeah.
Yes.
And it was basically a particle projection cannon, but more than that.
And these were characters you could play.
Yep.
These were just common characters you could play.
Yeah, and I think that was probably as close to a Space Marine as you got, pretty much in the system. Although a lot of the Coalition guys' armor looked very, very much more like a Space Marine.
Mm-hmm.
In the way the Coalition, because they always use the Death Head as their this skull.
Are we the baddies?
Yeah, they were totally the baddies.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about this Megaversal kind of design and what it really meant, and how it helped. I would say for me, it gave me options.
Oh yeah.
The earliest thing is I remember seeing the plethora of books, and every book, when you would go to the back and you'd be looking at sections, it would tell you about the next books that were coming out and give you examples of what they were. And I think that was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. My from the very beginning, when I started playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it was always okay, we're playing Turtles, but you can also pick from, this parts of Heroes Unlimited and use any of these martial art styles from Ninjas and Super Spies.
Well, yeah, because the end of the book always said it was compatible with the entire Palladium Books Megaverse.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. I mean, it literally is screaming right there at you, hey, use this with everything.
And to me, that was one of the great, fun of creating characters. I know I just referred to making Palladium characters as fun.
No, I think they were fun. Just different kind of fun. I mean, it's the same way that you play the game Paranoia. And it's fun.
Okay.
See how that goes?
We'll talk about that. But what's part of the fun though was just kind of trying to find that neat combination of, what is a what is a mutant raccoon that can do Pow Pat Mei leopard style kung fu look like, while wielding, other psionics that you might have dug out of Heroes Unlimited. It can get pretty crunchy, but pretty interesting. And I think I think TMNT was actually my first like classless game.
Yeah.
Long before I ever played anything like Vampire the Masquerade or anything like that. It was probably the first truly classless thing.
Yeah, and you're not ever asking the question of who's healing, who's tanking, who's DPS.
There's no real roles in there. Like
No.
You just kind of build a character, and there's a lot of different information that goes on there. Your martial arts styles, your equipment, your training, your special, super abilities, maybe some mutations, things like that.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Matt Elf's comment. Yes, the session 0, as we love to call it, was actual character creation sessions because we had to get together with people in the books and pull out reams of paper to make it. And yes, sometimes it was a part-time job.
This is from an era where the first session was just character creation and sometimes a part-time job. And
I remember sitting with books in libraries and at friends' houses creating my characters before the first session, only to be editing them again at the first session.
It was a full 8-hour job.
Oh, yeah.
It really was. To create characters for a full group of people. You had to get all in one place, and it was a full 8-hour session.
Yeah, I would say between 4 and 8 hours, depending on who was doing the work effort.
And I used to get so mad because I'd have a couple people who were like, "Oh, I'll just make my character up before we play." No, you won't.
No, you won't.
No, you won't, because that just cans the entire game session right there. Like, we're not playing if you're trying to do it before we play.
Yeah. Because you're going to be grabbing from errata and all kinds of crap on the fly.
We quit at 8, and if you're fast, you might get it done by 5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's if you're decisive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know exactly what you want to build.
Mm-hmm.
You know what books it's in.
So, getting to the core of things, what do you feel is the biggest difference between Palladium systems and D&D? It's just the system, the straight up numbers and dice and sheets. Because we were talking about, as you were looking at this book, I was like, look at the D&D book, look at this book. What do you feel is the paper to paper difference?
God, it's so information dense. There is rules for everything.
Okay.
I mean, I guess my counter question to you is, what edition of D&D are we talking about? Because you were comparing it to like 2nd edition D&D,
which was I felt was the comparative at the time.
Okay. I mean, if we're going to compare it to something like 5th, I mean, it's worlds difference.
Oh, regardless. I mean, but we're talking about years difference in world change. That's like trying to say a 57 Chevy and a 79 Camaro and trying to compare those two. Right. They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay, so if we're comparing like the Palladium multiverse or megaverse to something like AD&D 2nd edition, I think AD&D 2nd edition and D&D in general, because of its class base and stuff like that, tends to try to be very structured. This particular character is good at this thing, and if you take that character class, you're going to be that role in the group.
Yes, it sets a role.
Whereas I think Palladium just kind of lays it all out there and just goes, here's some stuff.
I feel that Palladium went to, here's what you do for a living, and therefore these are the things that are surrounded around it, and you could still be a janitor, but also have, like, enjoy comic books. Yeah. Because you have that ability, and it's within, a little bit of play. Or I could be a rhino that's 6 feet tall and is a Buddhist monk and knows Shaolin fighting styles.
Sure.
But at the same time also can breathe fire.
Mm-hmm.
Because of stuff.
Because of stuff. Whatever. It's weird.
Right.
It's weird. It's a comic booky sort of...
But it creates a more rounded character.
It really does. Yeah.
Whereas, if you go to a D&D fighter...
Really feel more like people.
Right. If you follow the book of D&D, you will be a race that defines who you are, and a class that defines who you are.
It defines what you do.
What defines what you do.
Yeah.
Beyond that, until we got I don't know, 3-5, we really didn't even have backgrounds, or we didn't have backgrounds then, but we had feats that gave us a little difference, and then now we have backgrounds, so we're finally getting to a point where the game is starting to help develop who the character is.
Yeah, 5 editions in.
Yeah. Whereas Palladium right off the bat was like, are you unscrupulous? Here's your rules of how to play your character. You will not do the following things.
Oh, and the alignment system is so much better than traditional D&Ds.
It's more complete.
It's more complete. It's better defined.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it before. We've talked about it before. But
and all of the books have different ones, by the way. I loved that about that.
Not different ones.
Oh, Ninjas and Super Spies, Rifts. I can go through all these. They're all have different ones. They're slightly different.
Are they?
Yeah, it's really funny.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe I just never noticed. I never compared them. But the alignment system in the Palladium system, I thought was really great because they didn't do things like lawful good, lawful neutral, things like that. They all had kind of names. So you still have good alignments, you still have evil alignments, but you don't have neutral alignments. You have selfish alignments, which I think is a better name for it.
It does make a lot more sense.
Because people think neutral, and they just think, oh, neither good nor bad. Or they do that weird thing where they're like, oh, for every good deed, I need to do a bad deed. Which is just weird. I don't know anybody who uses that kind of logic. Like, oh, I helped an old lady across the street. Now I gotta punch this dude. I'm sorry. Them's the rules, So they define them as selfish alignments.
Right, you have good, selfish, and evil.
Yeah. And a selfish alignment won't necessarily go out of their way to harm people for, fun and profit like an evil person will. But look, if the chips are down, there's one person in that room that they're looking after, and that's themselves. It's all about numero uno, and they clearly define that. An unprincipled character. This is one of the selfish alignment. Unprincipled will keep his word of honor, lie and cheat if necessary, especially to those of anarchist or evil alignments.
Right.
Will not kill an unarmed foe, but Dell will definitely take advantage of one. Will never harm an innocent. Will not use torture unless absolutely necessary, but it's still on the menu. Never kills for pleasure. Will attempt to bring the villain to justice alive or ruin him. Usually helps those in need. Rarely attempts to work within the law. So they don't really care about the laws. They're just they're just trying to do their job essentially. Will blatantly break the law to achieve his crime-busting goal. Dislikes and distrusts authority, the law, and bureaucracy. Feels they have been corrupted and abused. Works with groups, especially if it serves his needs.
Yep.
Is profitable, or he or she is in the limelight. And then will take dirty money. In other words, will loot criminals.
Right.
Never betrays a friend, and has a high regard for life and freedom. So it sounds like a generally okay guy, but when the chips are down, man, they can get a little bit mean.
Right.
But all these things are clearly defined for you in the book, and every single one of the alignments has a list like this that kind of defines where their limits are of that alignment. And I think that's something that like Dungeons & Dragons never really did. They give like a short little paragraph about what a lawful good is, like, oh, they revere laws and goodness.
Right. And it's not just that. Like, they went into detail, and this is only 2 pages in this book. They go into detail, and they give you a paragraph beyond, like, the wills, basically what they will and won't do, which is all matched to each other of talking like not keep their word, lie and cheat, betray. All those things are matched up. But they'll talk about like aberrant evil. The cliche is there's no honor among thieves. Is false when dealing with aberrant characters. This is a person who is driven to attain his goals through force, power, intimidation. Yet aberrant person stands apart from the norm with his own personal code of ethics. Though it's twisted ethics and by standards of good, he expects loyalty from his minions, punishing disloyalty and treachery with a swift, merciful death. If an aberrant person will always keep their word of honor and uphold any bargains, he will define his terms and live by them, whether anyone else likes it or not. But it makes them an evil person.
Yep.
And I think that right there defined what the difference was in morality and design, but then it went into all the other pieces of it.
Yep.
And that right there gave you a framework for roleplay.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful.
See, that like perfectly defines like The Godfather.
Well, a lot of characters.
It's all about family. It's all about taking care of my people. But no, I'm absolutely going to gun yours down in cold blood. But my people, they're family, and I love them.
Yes,
and I'm going to take good care of them. Is that sort of thing. And then, so then when like later after I played Palladium and I got this as my primer for alignments, I would go into D&D groups and they're like, oh, lawful evil. That means he's a rules lawyer. No, it doesn't. Doesn't mean that at all. It means this, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, no. It means a rules lawyer. And chaotic neutral means they're crazy.
Nope.
No, it really doesn't. Insanity is completely different from alignment, so...
Speaking of which, there's charts for that.
There's charts for that.
There are charts for insanity. There's charts for... That's the other thing that makes this system apart, is that there are charts for everything.
Charts for everything. Everywhere.
But at the same time, if I'm not good at being creative, if I can't think up a character, I can go through a chart to help me.
No. And look. Here's the thing. I'm gonna roll my eyes. You can all hear me rolling my eyes over this completely audio format. But I'm gonna say this. Mm-hmm. It's not bad. It's just not my cup of tea.
It's a good thing you're not drinking tea.
It's like it's like I said to you over dinner. I'm like it's like Overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a great game. I don't play it because it makes me angry and it makes me into a person I don't want to be around, let alone the others in my life. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. It just means that it's just not a good game for me to be playing. And I think that's kind of where I sit with Palladium in general, is like, okay, sure, I'm going to sit here and roll my eyes over the fact that there's a chart to tell you which chart to roll on.
Yes.
But at the same time, there are some people who like that sort of crunch or who need that sort of definition. You know?
I think I needed it early on, definitely.
Yeah.
It helped.
I was doing a lot of thinking about this, and it harkens back to a lot of discussions that I've had with Sean about GURPS,
mm-hmm.
you know? And you've all heard my opinions on GURPS before. And it's just the fact that, look, when Sean does something in a role-playing game, he wants to know that there is a rules set that defines what that outcome should be, so that there is an expected outcome, and
yes.
you're not left to the whims of the storyteller, kind
mm-hmm.
of going, well, I think I should adjudicate it this way. And then you have unmet expectations.
Right.
Mismanaged expectations,
correct.
You know. Palladium covers that, because there's a rule for everything.
Yes.
You just need to know which book and what page it's on.
Yep.
Roll on the chart, roll percentile, and there you go.
I think for me, it was a natural move for me to 7th Sea.
Mm-hmm.
Because 7th Sea fits a lot of the base design of Palladium and in feel. And that is you have characters and a rich world, but a lot of openness.
Mm-hmm.
And a good rule set. The difference is 7th Sea doesn't go into the minutia. But it still helps you build a character.
Yeah.
Right from the base go. And so I think for me, that really gave me a difference in the system.
Mm-hmm.
We have questions.
We have a lot of questions.
In 13 minutes.
Okay.
Let's hit one of these.
All right. We're going to start at the top of the list, or you got a special one that puts a twinkle in your eye?
Go for it.
All right. So the Technolich asks, do you find system-wide integration to be a boon or bane when designing adventures?
Boon.
System-wide integration. What do you think he means by that?
I think what he means is what we're talking about in the multiverse, where everything fits together clean.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a bane or a boon depending on what you're trying to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I'm thinking system-wide integration, I'm thinking something like Dresden Files, where the rules are very specific to emulate the things in the Dresden Files books.
Gotcha.
Okay. So taking the Dresden Files rules and trying to use them to tell your own story with that isn't a Dresden story makes it very difficult because they're so intrinsically written. The rules are so intrinsically written into the world and reflect the world. In how they
I understand that. I could understand that.
So if you're trying to go out of world, then it's a terrible hassle, and makes it almost so you can't supplant it. On the other hand, if you're trying to play in world, it's wonderful because every rule helps with the world building. It helps with the feel of the world and how it plays out.
So then I guess that does go to the second question, which is, do you ever find yourself grabbing pieces of garbage systems and incorporating them into broader play?
Yeah.
More concepts than mechanics
yeah,
all
absolutely.
the time. I think that's totally valid.
There's gems in every pile of crap.
Yeah. I mean, 7th Sea First Edition had many gems that I've carried over from it. I've carried stuff over from RoboTech. I've carried stuff over from other game systems, but they're mostly house rules that I carry in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think it's great. Grab anything you find is valuable and use it, man. I mean, nobody's... Look, you don't owe any like publisher any rights or anything like that.
Nope.
Like if you steal shamelessly during your tabletop games, man, just do it. Steal from movies, steal from other RP games, cute little rules bits that you've seen there.
Yeah.
Wherever you find your inspiration, man, grab it and use it.
Next question? I'm going to jump down to Overwatches. Okay. Which Palladium Megaverse setting would you most likely run a game in? Which setting would you most likely play a game in?
Mine's the same answer.
TMNT?
Not even TMNT. After the Bomb.
After the Bomb, specifically?
After the Bomb, specifically. After the Bomb is the setting that they wrote as an expansion to TMNT at first, then became its own setting when they lost the TMNT license. But it takes place in a post-apocalyptic future where mutant animals are common.
Yeah.
And so everybody kind of, you don't have to like slink around in the shadows and worry about humans being like, oh my god, it's a mutant. Because mutants are everywhere.
I would love to play again in TMNT. I think if I was going to run a game system, I kind of enjoyed running RoboTech. Mm-hmm. Because I understand it and I think it's fun and I can play it lighter than the actual game mechanics put it out to be. So I think that's for me. Mm-hmm. So pick one.
All right, we are going to go to the Mad Elf. If it's not covered in the course of the discussion, favorite and least favorite Palladium games and why. I think I covered mine. After the Bomb specifically, as the offshoot of TMNT is my favorite, because I love the creativity of the mutant animals. I can't get that anywhere else in any other RP game that I know of. And least favorite is probably Rifts, again, just because it's kind of all over the place. I don't really like the grim, dark future sort of setting, and MDC was just a step too far for me.
I think Rifts is my least favorite, even though I played a lot in it, only because it's so wide of breadth that it's hard to get a handle on why people would be together.
Yeah.
It makes it really hard as a storyteller.
A glitter boy, a juicer, and a coalition soldier walk into a bar.
Exactly.
No, that's not a joke. That's the intro to our story.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. But you could still do some neat things with it. But it would. I don't see long campaigns. I just don't see it. So yeah, I think my favorite out of it would still be Other Strangeness. So yeah. All right. Knox wants to know, do you think the licensing and marketing of popular properties like Palladium has done inspires or restricts good tabletop role-playing storytelling and gameplay?
I think that's a great question. I look here. I'm on the side of I think that it inspires good roleplay. I know there's when you're licensing an official property, there is a chance that there's going to be, I guess you would call it the Matthew Mercer effect nowadays, where people look at the popular media it's based on and then try to emulate that at their tabletop, and may be disappointed when their tabletop game does not emulate the popular media, right? So there may be a danger of that, but frankly, I never ran into it. Like, in all of my games, at least, and maybe I'm in the minority here, when playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, nobody ever wanted to be the Turtles. You know, we all looked at the fantastic smorgasbord of mutant animals and went, oh, wouldn't it be cool to play, like, a mutant Wolverine? You know, how crazy would that be in hand-to-hand combat, man? I don't want to mess with one of those in real life, let alone a 6-foot-tall one that knows kung fu. So I always thought it kind of inspired, because you could look to the media as for inspiration, and it would get you thinking about, like, wow, what would I do if I were in that universe? What would I do if I were in RoboTech? You know, and I had a Veritech.
Right.
You know, what would my adventures against the Zentradi be like?
Yeah.
You know?
I think that as a whole, the licensing is problematic.
Sure.
Because you're betting on whether or not the system is going to make it right. And things like, I'm just going to throw some out there, Star Wars, Firefly, TMNT, RoboTech. These are all systems that came from genres. Now, granted, RoboTech was based on the Palladium system, which was already an existing system. So in a lot of ways, it fit just fine.
Sure.
It worked out really well, in fact. Whether or not we can say that the RoboTech as a franchise failed because of it, you could argue all kinds of directions on whether it was successful or failed. I think that's more of a personal thing. Firefly certainly didn't fail because it became a game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the game system failed to meet the expectations of the players in a lot of ways.
That's probably right.
I think Star Wars did to a degree, because I know it's been multiple versions now, and in different ways. And it's still a giant universe, less of a individual storyline. I think originally, people wanted to play a Jedi, and now you have all this other errata that goes with it, so it's more of a multiverse in what it's doing. But I think it does, to a degree, for certain people, do a disloyalty, because you have an expectation, then you sit down in front of a storyteller who can't meet the story that you saw or read.
It probably puts a lot of pressure on the storyteller to emulate that media.
Right. I mean, I'm going to say this. Do you really want to play in a fanfic that someone else wrote?
I don't know.
Sometimes you do.
Maybe.
Depends on who's writing it.
But that's a die roll.
Right.
But that's a die roll, yeah.
Right. And I think that becomes the problem. I think that's really where it can get touchy, is that it isn't just the system. It isn't just the rules. It isn't just the writing. It isn't just the art. It isn't just how well the die rolls. It's the story being told within that.
Right. And if you've got a good storyteller, then it's amazing, because they lean into that source material, and they bring it to life, and it feels really real to you in a thing that you already love. But if you've got a bad storyteller, unfortunately, you've got a line for comparison, and they just destroy something that you already love.
Correct.
At least when you're telling a unique story in a world that maybe is you've built, or if it's just an open world like Faerun, like Forgotten Realms, anything can happen there. So you just tell your own stories, and you don't really have a baseline of comparison.
How many times have we had video game spin-offs of a popular franchise not meet expectations?
Oh, all the time. All the time.
And that's...
And especially the other way around. How many times have they made movies out of video games?
Oh, dear God.
And it's just... any time I hear that it's a video game movie, it's just the most disastrous thing in the world.
So many mistakes.
Yeah.
So many mistakes. So, yeah, I would say as a whole, I think there's been more failures, but I think at the same time, it comes down to your experiences that make it good or bad.
Yeah.
So,
I think as long as you're willing to go into a licensed property and understand that it's not going to be the licensed property, as long as you understand that you're going in making it your own, and you're just playing in their universe with some of their rules and some of their world building, and go into it with that expectation that you're going to be telling your own unique story, then I think it's great.
Yeah,
but
it's also
not everybody can.
And not every character who's going to go in that is going to be a unique character. And we've talked about this before, where people are playing literally spin-offs of Critical Role characters in other people's campaigns, and expecting the world to react to their character as if they are that character, even though the name's different. And they're totally different, but they're the same tiefling, doing the exact same bit, doing the exact same voice, doing the exact same everything.
Not only that, but I did the same thing that they did in Critical Role. Why didn't the outcome...
Right.
Why wasn't the outcome the same,
Exactly. So, yeah. So one of the things we're going to talk about next week, as we're getting close to wrapping up here, is something that I think is a topic that gets forgotten a lot, and that is law and order in fantasy realms.
Oh, I know, right?
And in not just fantasy, but in gaming in general. So we're going to talk about where is the law when you go to play a game.
Where's a cop when you need him?
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get into that next week and get your questions together, because we all want to know what happened to the law.
All right. You can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram, @ST_Conclave. If you're listening, you can listen to us live every week at 7 p.m. Wednesday nights, Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And you can find us on Discord as well. Please join us on Discord. Join the discussions. A lot of great discussions happen there. Ask questions. Ask for help. We're all here to help. You can find that link on our webpage, which is... sorry, I'm reading the wrong link here. Storyteller-conclave.blueberry.com. Net.
Net. Yes, it is net.
We're still new to this. I'm sorry.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members, Knox, Sam, and the Arcane Asylum especially, for helping us out. We appreciate all that we get from you guys. It keeps this going, and if you'd like to donate, please come to our Patreon page, and we'd love to have you and be able to say your name live on the air as well, and get the additional bonuses of being able to chat with us like they do this week. Our intro music is Beyond the Warrior by Guy Frog. You can find that at guyfrogmusic.weebly.com. Our outro music, which you're hearing now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find that at soundcloud.com/midairmachine/tracks.
And a big shout out to our families, Vicky and Sean, for supporting us, all of our friends who've sat with us at our table over the years, and to you, every single one of our listeners. We love you.
We love you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.